Welcome to the Northeast Kingdom Voice. I'm your host, Scott Wheeler. This is part 2 of a 2-part show with Loralee Tester, the Executive Director of the Northeast Kingdom Chamber of Commerce. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for having me back, Scott. It's really great to be here.
Yeah, we had so much fun last time. It was so fascinating to learn not only about the chamber and what it's doing, but also about you, that I couldn't resist to have you back on because you are very contagious, your enthusiasm.
So, I do. That's really generous and kind of you to say. I love it here, and I love the people here. So it's fun to be in the role that I've got.
So the last show, we were all over the map. We talked about a wide variety of things, and including who you are, what makes you tick, and why you decided to accept the job back, a year or so ago?
Yeah, just over a year and a half ago.
Right. But now I'd like to go and talk a little bit. We recently had Northeast Kingdom Day down at the State House, and it seemed to be pretty well attended.
Yeah, I think there were well over 90 people from the Northeast Kingdom that made the trip over.
Right. Yeah, I think because I served in the Vermont State House in a previous chapter of my life, and I think that was the day that we had Lola Aiken recognized. I believe she was probably 100 or 101, and that was I believe she was the chief of staff for Senator George Aiken, who is known for helping to popularize the title Northeast Kingdom. Well, I say she was chief of staff, but she did end up marrying her boss, and yeah, she married him after working for him for 30-something years.
Oh, wow.
And Lola, even at 100, if she could have been a stand-up comedian. She was such a funny, wonderful woman. When I served in the State House, we'd go out for breakfast together, and just a wonderful woman. And she loved the Northeast Kingdom. So what went on this year at the Northeast Kingdom Day?
It was really great. The schedule allowed for different community members from the Northeast Kingdom to testify in different committees. I sat in on a couple. One with Mike Marcotte's committee was great. You had a couple folks from Weidman spoke about workforce needs, their desired investment in the community, but then also the need for housing. And actually, one of my favorite one was actually a young woman named Kayla, who is the chair of the Young Professionals Network, which is a program of the Northeast Kingdom Chamber. And she's somebody who moved here when she was a teenager, graduated high school, went away, came back, went away, came back, and just has made an active decision to move back to the Northeast Kingdom and make it home. And in so doing has said, what can I do to make it be a place that I want to stay? So it's been really cool. That was one of my favorite parts. And she was sharing that story to the committee of we need to do a better job as we're looking at demographic decline in our schools that don't have enough students anymore, and some of those challenges that we're facing because of it. Why? Not just what do we need to do to make people stay, but understand why people are leaving. And I thought that was a great shift in perspective that she presented.
Right. All of my kids, I have 3, all my biological children, they've all moved. And I even now spend my time between Derby, Marquette, Michigan, and Southeast Asia. So our whole family to some degree, like my children will never return, just because they've built their lives elsewhere, lives that because of their professions they would not be able to return. Well, for the most part. So,
What made them leave, do you think, at the beginning, like when they decided to venture
well,
out?
well, I think part of it is when you're a good parent, and I hope to think my late wife and I were good parents. You teach them to explore the world. So even on a limited income, we brought the kids to different places. We showed them the world, and they kind of liked it. So they
Hmm.
went to college outside of the state. And when you do that, you risk them not returning.
Hmm.
And that's not necessarily a bad thing. Some people they return. For example, I don't know if he's a member, but Pierre Gervais, retired Colonel Pierre Gervais, from Island Pond.
Hmm.
He's a decorated Army veteran of, I believe, both wars. He went to Norwich University, happened to be a phys ed teacher, fell in love with the cadets, and ended up being many years in the army. But then he retired back to the Northeast Kingdom after retirement and started up this three branches. Oh, sorry, Pierre. Three branches. Well, it's a restaurant in Island Pond.
Oh yeah, I've heard of it. Yes, I have not been there, but I've heard great things about it.
Yeah, so he returned home after retirement. So then, well, he thought he retired, but well, there he is working in Little Island Pond, the town of his youth.
Wow.
Yeah, so my boys, who knows? My boys and daughter, they might return, but they're
Mhm.
so firmly entrenched in their communities now, whether it be Marquette, Michigan, and Albuquerque, New Mexico, and then in North Carolina, Chapel Hill.
Mhm.
They're entrenched, but you do see a lot of people though who do return, especially in their retirement years. But the thing is, a lot of them bring stuff home with them that can actually better our region,
Mhm.
right? Have you met Terry Lucas?
I haven't.
Terry Lucas is a man you need to meet.
Tell me
Uh,
about him. What does he do?
Terry Lucas was a poor boy from Newport, well, working class. He didn't think his parents had enough money to send him to, didn't think his parents had enough money to send him to college. So he was a subscribed computer geek. He was ahead of his time. He was working on the mainframe computers at North Country by the time he graduated. Then he went out and into the world, traveled the country working with computers. Then he ran into this relatively unknown guy, Bill Gates, and he there was the beginning of his very illustrious world in computer technology. And
Oh,
he
wow.
he lives in let me get this right, uh, Washington or Oregon, I can't
Oh,
remember.
okay.
And then he has his summer home in Newport, where he's from, and he's always looking for ways to better our region, especially for young people to know that you can succeed, whether
Mhm.
it be here or elsewhere. I'll have to have. You might want to touch base with him.
Yeah, I would love to have to be connected to him. I think that that's such a great perspective because me too. I think I want my two boys to experience the world, but I want them to feel like they could make a life for themselves here.
Right.
I think that that's the key that to not feel like you're trapped here and then be
Right.
stuck, but to experience the world and make the decision that this is still a place that can work for me.
Well, one of the doctors at North Country, he's been there for years. Uh, Dr. Greg Walker, I went to school with him, and his father was a lineman, and I'm
Mhm.
not sure what his mother did. And he's a anesthesiologist, and he, I believe, has traveled as a doctor, worked in different hospitals, but it appears that considering I'm 60 and he's probably 60 or 61, apparently he's decided to live the rest of his working life here. So there are people who uh, they do have there are people who find ways to live here.
Yeah, and you asked about NEK Day at the State House. I think not enough. And I think that we as Vermonters need to really grapple with what the consequences of that are. I think we, in our minds, we still are clinging to an ideal that doesn't exist anymore.
Oh, absolutely.
And I think it worked for a very long time until it became so easy for us to leave.
Right.
And you had these communities that were multi-generational and people cared about each other, and you had some of those networks and resources, and you had full schools, and you had you know uh, some collaboration and depth of support that doesn't exist in this world anymore necessarily. And so without, like, thinking about housing, right? And I think there's this idea from many people like, oh no, I want to keep my ridges clear, and I want to have this, and I want to have that. I don't want to have traffic. More people does not mean more houses. Think about how many roads you go drive down where the roofs are caving in, or ways that we could take other delinquent properties and rehabilitate them to be something thriving. But the reality is the schools, that's the conversation of the legislature right now, because it's too expensive based on how many people we have. And I think a lot of people talk about um this ideal, but it's really based in um xenophobia and a reality that just doesn't exist. It bothers me. It bothers me, the idea of not in my backyard. I think it's especially when we have the homeless or houseless population that we've got. We're not really taking care of our neighbors.
One one thing I do think though, and I don't think it's only in Vermont, but we tend to focus so much on what is going wrong. We
Yes.
don't talk about what is going right. And I think part of that lies in the hands of the media too.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. You are
Is
so right.
like I tell people wherever I travel in Vermont, wherever I travel in this country or in the world, I find wonderful people and
Yes.
from all walks of life. But I think the 24-hour news cycle, I think even in part, it's scaring people out of Vermont or from coming to Vermont because everything gets blown up into a whole new proportion.
Yeah. Oh, I agree. I mean, I think you're right. It's incredible what we have, what here, the beauty, the natural resources, recreation, Catamount Arts, and the different downtowns. I think about what Newport does with Wednesdays on the waterfront, and people who do care about their neighbors, and it's really, really powerful.
But let's be real too. I tell people um, Vermont's a beautiful place, but it's not for everybody.
Yes.
Like for example, there are people that no matter how much they enjoy visiting, they would not want to live
Mm.
there. Because it doesn't offer what they're looking for, and that's not a bad thing. It's like I love visiting the cities. I
Mhm.
mean, high, skyscrapers, but no, no, no. I
Yeah.
like to visit there, but that doesn't mean I don't like it. I just don't want to live there. And I think we have some of those, we have people like who it's just not for, like, I worked for a company, a nonprofit once, and I felt they went through one regime where I thought they were recruiting people based on half truths, and they could recruit people to come, but that's one thing, but then to get them to stay once they see what it really is, because
Mhm.
it's cold, it's snowy,
Yeah. Cold
you
right now.
yeah, and so I think you got to be truthful. So, what else? What else was talked about?
It was great. There was Oh my goodness. So there was a press conference that was held, and Peter Welch was there, which was great. And he spoke, and then Mike Pichek spoke a little bit, and Lieutenant Rogers did. And it was reminding ourselves about how incredible our community is and the assets that we have, and that there's work to do, right? It was a blend of all of it. But I will tell you, Mike Pichek is, the treasurer's office is trying to do a lot of bipartisanship things that help everyone. One of those is the baby bonds, and the Northeast Kingdom is an area that they are trying to pilot it and see if it can help address some of those, disequity needs. And then Vermont Saves. I actually think it's the Vermont's best kept secret that small businesses can have their employees join in on a retirement program through the state,
Mhm.
that that a lot of employers can't offer retirement for their employees, but
Right.
this is something Vermont's doing, which I do. I think that we have people at the legislature and in the state who are trying really hard to be creative to support the people who live here.
Right.
So that
Yeah,
was cool. It was neat to see that.
I think you mentioned that the shortage of housing, and that's the one thing that has proved problematic up this way. And I like, for the hospital, it's one thing to try to get people to come here, but then when they come here, they can't find places to live. Now, your husband, Sean Tester, is the CEO of NVRH. Do you know if their hospital has some of the same problems
Oh,
about?
100%. Yeah, I think that especially we know it was really fresh during the pandemic that a lot of people wanted to move here for positions,
Right.
and couldn't find housing. And it was all sorts of housing. It was from an apartment in downtown so their kid could walk to St. Johnsbury Academy, to somebody who wanted a horse farm, to all levels of housing. And that is a real tricky nut to crack. When you look at a lot of the investments that Vermont is making towards housing, a lot of it works for the more urban spaces in the state, but not rural Vermont. The challenge is just a little bit different because the scale is smaller and more spread out. It's not just in 100-unit apartment building or 10 100-unit apartment buildings. It's smaller scale, and so affordably it's hard, but it's a huge issue. And Act 250 and the tier 1, 2, and 3 and all of those types of things, it actually really impacts something that might like that you probably know more about than I do, but in that those older generations who might have had a farm and then they split up land so their children could have land, and then
Right.
it became, it was very much a way of being in rural Vermont. And the way the zoning is now working, that could effectively end that
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
tradition.
There's the yes. Some people really want to, because they have generational land, but it's been a struggle for them to hold on to it.
Yep.
And though, I guess I can't fully understand, like, the shortage in this sense is our population is going down. I believe, like, Newport, let's say Newport. I believe over the years the population has gone downhill. I believe we were one time at about 5,000, about. but then it is going down. But then if you look at these once beautiful homes, particularly over on the west side of town or the Main Street section out in there, they were once beautiful, big, single family homes. Now, for good or bad, they have been made into apartments, which would make extra, uh, you know, uh, living units. But,
Well,
and
actually, and I don't totally understand on one level. Like, Kevin Chu, I think he's actually coming up to Newport to speak. I can't remember which date it is. It might even be Thursday. He has shared. I've heard him give some data points that Vermont has about 1 million bedrooms, but not enough homes or units, and
right,
that's an interesting piece. I think that part of that is exactly what you have these places that have lots of bedrooms, but families are only having none or one or two kids instead of
right,
8, 9, and 10. So that's, I think, a part of it. So like the house that I live in, it's my husband's grandparents' farm. Pretty soon, we have one kid in college and the other's about to head off, and it's going to be two of us in this great big 5,000 square foot house, right? So it's underutilized.
right. Well,
And then I think the other piece is that there are a lot of homes that in the heyday of Vermont when we were thriving, but that after decades of deferred maintenance, shall we say,
yeah,
the houses are not really inhabitable anymore.
right.
And you just in the last 5 years, so many houses in Lindenville have been taken down.
Right. Well, you had a good point about these big houses. Like, my wife and I, well, my late wife and I, we lived. Uh, we had 3 children, had a wonderful time in our home, and then when they moved out, it was a 5 bedroom house, and it was just us. And so before she died, we talked about what I should do with it. So I sold it to my niece, and a few years later, one of their kids are going to be graduating, and the other one. So already in that period of time, we've had 2 members of our family, 2 parts of us, and then them grow out of
Hmm.
that big house. And it's the other thing you mentioned, the big families. From a history perspective, you know we did have big families, especially the Catholics, the
Hmm.
French Catholics. And as the I interviewed Dr. Frank Fioramonti. You might recognize that name because his son was the long-term handler for Senator Bernie Sanders. He was his right-hand man for many years, and Dr. Fioramonti was close to 100 when I interviewed him, and he talked about the big families, and he says we romanticize those big families, but he says the secret was most of those big families weren't by design. It was the lack of family planning.
Hmm.
And then all of a sudden birth control comes, and he said there was a it's so we romanticize the big families, but yeah, that weren't
Yeah.
always by design.
Right. But it does have an impact. And it
No,
also, I
it
think
does.
it was helpful for farms, you know what I mean? You needed, it was built-in labor.
Right. Oh no, that's true. The other thing I often muse about, my brother is a dying. One of my brothers is a dying breed. He's a mechanic who knows mechanics from the cars without computers to the cars with computers.
Okay.
I often mull over the fact with him that the reason they struggle now finding mechanics is because there's less farms. I don't know if there's because farmers can do anything. They might
Yes,
not,
they can.
and it's like when I've interviewed combat veterans of World War II, they just loved having farmers because if one of their tanks broke down, those farmers could fix it.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. We have fewer farmers. They're bigger and we have we have fewer small farms. And there was an era, and it was several decades, I think, where we pushed kids to just head straight to college.
Yep.
And I think we're realizing how unbelievably important and vital the trades are. And
Oh,
and
absolutely.
it became a, if you're smart, right, you would go to college, but like we're now understanding how unbelievably intelligent one needs to be a tradesperson. And I think there's been a shift, but
Right.
it's slow.
Right. And that's a good point because uh, if you're good in the trades, which requires a different kind of smart,
Hmm.
um, oftentimes, especially in like places like the Northeast Kingdom, you're actually making sometimes far more money than the
Oh,
people who have academic educations.
100%. Yeah, especially given how expensive college is these days.
Right. I know my favorite story was years ago. One of my friends uh, was at a school board meeting, and he couldn't believe a teacher said this to him. He said, "It's your fault you did not want to get educated." And Roy, my friend, was like, he was taken aback because here he was as a master plumber and a master electrician, not like master plumbing and heat, and he probably made triple. That teacher had no idea that he probably made triple the money. And people have such a misunderstanding of people who work with. Because I thank God every day for the trades because I can't do anything.
Oh, I know it.
I
It's
can't
so,
pound nails. I can't, I can unplug a sink sometimes. So, yeah.
yeah, I just don't understand where that mentality came from. It's wild to even look at it now, and it's hard. It's hard on your body, and it's hard on your mind. You have to be creative and problem solving and understanding your craft. It's so important.
Was even looking at the technology, like it's easy for us to criticize today's young people because of technology. Yes, they get carried away with it sometimes too much. But now that I'm remarried and I now have a 15-year-old and a 7-year-old here, I had no realization that they were going to be my IT team. Is at their age, they can really, they know their technology. And so
Yeah.
uh, yeah. So what else have you testified about at the state house?
It is about the housing. I have lots more to say about the last one led into trying to create an environment where people can succeed. I think our tax policies and our, permitting expectations and a lot of those that are well-meaning and maybe look good on paper, in reality don't always work out. And I really would like to see our legislature investigate that a little bit better and
Right.
realize, like I think it we need all of it, right? We need to make it so that we can have, every kind of business succeed, big, small, in the middle. We need to be able to have it so that we have recreation and have it be a beautiful place to live, and we need to have good education. And so I think a lot of times we all have our pet projects, but it all needs to be happening at the same time, and understanding what we have, which is like my joy of being in the chamber, right? I can look at the whole big picture, and I have every sort of business in what it is that we do. So
Right. All
yeah.
right. I just like saw the notice that we only have 2 more minutes
Oh,
left. Holy smokes, that went fast. But I'm going to certainly have to have you back on. As in the future.
well,
Uh,
thanks for the opportunity.
yeah, because as I said, your chamber has had a long history of outreach in coming on my show for the last, I think, whether it be my radio show or my TV show for the last almost 20 years. So I've always provided you with a forum as I do with everybody else, and so uh, I just want to thank you for all you're doing.
Likewise, thank you for giving voice to so many, just special stories in the community. It's really inspiring, Scott.
I love doing what I do. I probably could have found something a little more lucrative than my Northland Journal and my radio and my TV show. They've doubled my pay every year, and I started out from $0, and they doubled that every year, and I'm still at the same. Uh, I'm still at the same pay. So this is just a fun thing, just to help get the word out about the kingdom, and so yeah, and all that's going on.
Well, the
Uh,
community is fortunate.
all right, all right. Well, thank you for coming on. We'll have to have you back on.
Thanks, Scott.
Thank you, and thank you to the viewers for tuning in to another segment of the Northeast Kingdom Voice.